was this kind of big brouhaha a year ago when Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, you know, were on their TV show, Grace and Frankie, and they were discovered to be earning exactly the same as Martin Sheen and Sam Waterston, who were not producers of the show. And, you know, parity of salary is an important issue.
We're talking about, you know, sort of birds and the bees, and when to introduce that to our children. And I was recently, my daughter is turning 8, and you know, I'm starting to beg the question, like, when is it appropriate to start to introduce some of these ideas? And so I naturally started reaching out to my girlfriend, and my girlfriend had recently spoken to another mother about this, and this mother said, when you get ready to talk to your daughters specifically, or your boys as well, because it applies to both, you don't do the old-fashioned way of saying, okay, and then the man puts his penis into the vagina. You say to your daughter, your son, the woman takes his penis and puts it into your vagina.
This is revolutionary.
You take his penis.
It's very good.
Right? And at the same time, you don't just talk about sex between a man and a woman. You talk about sex between a man and a man. You talk about sex between a woman and a woman, and really looking at it as an empowering tool, and that you're making the empowered choice about having sex. And you're sending that message to that person you're deciding to have sex with.
Which, to return it to the conversation of television, since we were just speaking about Grace and Frankie, I mean, here are two, you know, giants, these women.
Giants.
Giants. You know, Oscar winners and, you know, every award under the sun, and, you know, many, many decades, much fame, and greatly adored. And, you know, they created this show for themselves that they produce, and it came out when the first season started, that they were actually being paid the same amount of money as Martin Sheen and Sam Waterston, who play their ex-husbands, who are more supporting parts. Now, I love Martin Sheen and Sam Waterston, and they're fantastic in the show, but it's inappropriate.
If the tables were turned.
It's inappropriate, you know? And so, again, I mean,
That's so nuts.
It's nuts, and it's really surprising and weird. But again, you know, look, there are a lot bigger issues to worry about in the world than people who are starring in TV shows that maybe should be earning more money. Because the truth of the matter is, you're starring in a TV show,
you're making enough money.
You're making enough.
Yeah, this is it goes beyond us. This issue is universal across the world. So, you know, I think that we can all agree that we're all very fortunate, but the system is flawed, whether it's our industry, whether it's, you know, teaching industry, whether it's any industry out there. I mean, I've got friends that work in all walks of life that are all earning 79 cents to the dollar.
I mean, a lot of statistics say that it does sometimes start when they're taking the job, because women tend to be stereotypically more agreeable. They don't want to fight for what they're worth.
Where does that come from?
Right. Well, we are generally less desiring of conflict than men, because we have a lesser amount of testosterone. But again, like, you have to acknowledge all of these evolutionary instincts. And like, wasn't there a story about, didn't Robin Wright recently put her foot down, put her pump down at Kevin Spacey, and then I think she had not threatened, but said, I am as valuable, and then showed them the statistics that said she was as valuable, and now they make the same thing. I feel like those examples have to be talked about more, and I feel like, if I'm quoting the story correctly, then I'm very proud that she did that, because she is a very integral part of that show and is very necessary, and she absolutely should be making what he's making.
You know, one of my favorite sayings in Hollywood is, we got to get the guy first. You may be one of the very first people to read a script because somebody's very interested in you for a particular role. And it could very well even be like the lead role. But there is this tendency to lean into the idea that we have to get the guy first, which means you don't necessarily secure financing for a film until they actually get the guy. And that is something that, that is, you know, it's just all too common.
The truth of the matter is, if you're talking particularly about roles for white men between like 40 and 60, there are just so many of them. Right? I mean, I can tell you, you know, like right now, Laura Linney and I are going to do a play in the spring, and we're looking for some white guys to be those other really meaty but slightly, you know.
A lot of choices?
No, nobody. So
they're
far,
all
nobody.
working.
They're all working.
Oh.
So part of it, right, is supply and demand, right? That they're just, for that sweet spot of white guys, there's so many roles for them.
I'll also
and they
go
can hold
back
out.
that it's not just, I don't know that I agree with the evolutionary thing around women having a less desire to lean towards conflict. I also think that women in our culture are trained and told that we have to be more agreeable, and that there is a nature with which, you know, I mean, it's, you know, also statistically shown that when a woman asks for something of a man, it is seen as a conflict as opposed to
Such a nasty woman.
such a nasty woman. Nasty woman. Nasty woman to speak up and say things that are true. She's so nasty.
But I think what I meant is that women are more apt to recognize the lack of conflict and taking the higher road as the position of power than men are.
I don't think it's a position of power, though. I think we're less likely to value ourselves. You know.
I think that, you know, knowing your value as much as Robin Wright, like really, like statistically knowing your
Our
value.
culture does not support that.
You know, knowing that value and knowing your own value, that self-worth, that value. And what I found in being prepared to walk away, there's so much power in not and when I walk away, I'm not bluffing.
Well, that's
Like,
what I mean in not engaging.
Yeah.
Like if I'm sitting in traffic with my husband and he's going ballistic because of road rage and I am not, he has the ability to get into an accident, into a fight that will take us into a jail cell. And I'm going, do you know what the real position of power is, bud? It's just letting the other person merge, because you know why? I don't care. And it's not gonna ruin my day. And I don't feel like I was trained to do that because I'm not being demure or meek by doing that. I'm being the smart one.
But in the traffic situation, you do win. But in the salary negotiation, then I don't think you do.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying there is a maternal aspect that most females possess, and there is a testosterone blitzkrieg that a lot of men possess, and it comes out in different ways. And I think women are definitely less apt to fight for themselves, which needs to be changed, but I don't necessarily think that aspect of let's all get along is always a negative. I think in very, very many ways,
I
it
don't
can
know
be
that
a
I'm
positive.
talking about the let's all get along. I think it's more that there is an expectation and a training that happens in what is expected of a woman. And part of that goes into how we see our worth and what we are allowed to do in asking for what we deserve. And how we speak up in general. You know, I mean, there's many a study done that in a room with men and women, if a woman speaks up at the same level, same amount as a man, men will think women dominated the conversation. It's exactly the same as they did.
Yeah.
They spoke up the same way. Whether it's being told like, you're sounding bitchy, or why do you sound so aggressive? I mean, the same thing applies to the way people see the actions of a black man. You know, oh, that was so aggressive. Was it though? Was it aggressive, or is it just that you have an idea of the way that my behavior is supposed to look and what that tells you? And as a woman, there's an idea of the way you're supposed to compliment more or be softer in your tone, where when a man does the exact same.
Or wait to be offered.
Right. And that otherwise it's ambition.
Wait to have the penis put in you.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
You know,
let me take your
bring it
penis
back.
and put it inside my vagina.
Instead of saying like, I'm going to take your penis and put it in my vagina. I mean, and I do think and that's the reason that strikes us.
Yeah.
That is the reason that strikes us.
Yeah.
Because there is an idea that there is a way that we receive, we
Yeah.
don't go get. You know,
I'm going to
and
take your money and I'm going to put it inside my bank.
pocket, right? You know, because yes, and that's really
Right,
that
yeah.
is the reason, though. I believe that that's the reason that you even
See, it
saying
starts
that
there. Yeah,
is-
yeah.
It just completely changes. I mean, I'll just start one more subject if I can, just because we're on it. But it's also this idea. You know, I'm a woman that's 43 and I don't have children. And people say, oh, my child gave my life so much meaning. So does that mean without a child, my life has no meaning? I just beg to ask the question. And it's just something to ask because it's such a like an assumed idea, you know. Or so if the whole goal for me to get married, was it? And does then it mean I haven't been chosen or I haven't chosen? You know, and I think that goes back to putting the penis in your vagina.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's first of all how you need to get pregnant.
But like, not anymore.
But not true.
Not anymore. Like I can get pregnant other ways. But so these are just questions that I think for me I like to pose because there's this assumption that like we take on, and it's like, is that true? Is that true? Like, does my life have to have meaning because of that, or is it that?
Less
And it
meaningful,
could be
yeah.
true for that person, and it
could
could be
be.
true, but it doesn't have. That's the beauty of diversity. It isn't true for
Right,
you.
but there is
but
an
there is a
assumption
there's
that
an
I'm a
assumption.
better person
Yes.
now than I used to be.
And a
because
dominant
I have children.
discourse
Totally,
around
100%.
what, you know, and I personally am one of those people that with curiosity and kindness, I constantly am sort of poking holes in that dominant discourse.
Yeah.
Whether it's around beauty or the assumptions of who you're supposed to be as a woman or how you're supposed to ask for things, and going kindly and respectfully and also with curiosity that the point is not my dignity and grace, but instead making more space for my selfhood. Like, okay, for me, like how do I keep creating space for the choices that I want to make, not based on how you see me or what makes me likable or alluring to a man, but instead like who I am as a person. How do I keep creating space for that in a culture that tells me that I'm supposed to take up a teeny little
But
spot?
I always remember this episode that I saw of a not very good, not very long-lived TV show of Baby Boom. You know, the Kate Jackson played the Diane Keaton role.
I loved that movie.
And in this, and she was a new mother, and she was struggling with her baby, and not feeling like she was doing a very good job. And she had a dream in which, like Florence Henderson and the mom from Happy Days and a few kind of iconic TV moms came and spoke to her, but they didn't speak to her as their characters. They spoke to her as the actresses who had played those characters.
goodness.
And they said, don't worry that you have to leave your kid, your baby, and go off to have your job. All of us playing those perfect with the apron, you know,
had to
housewives,
leave our-
we were all working women. Do you know what I mean? But we were like, our job was to perpetuate the idea that there are these, you know, moms at home with nothing to do except, you know, clean a bruised,
Get a good detergent.
scraped knee, and right.